Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, brought to you by Vivid Seats. I'm your host, James Anderson, and we've got a great show for you today. We've got my buddy Zac Beck from Dynasty Dugout joining me to do some prospect superlatives, best, potential breakout, maybe breakout you're not buying, struggling hitter to buy low on, all that kind of fun stuff. So going to be a great episode of Prospect Talk. Zac, thanks for coming back on the show, man. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me back. Always fun to be here. I'm doing well. I'm catching a doubleheader tonight, St. Paul Saints and Indianapolis Indians. It's not a Bubba Chandler start, but I am getting Thomas Harrington and Andrew Morris at least. So looking forward to that.
That's awesome, man. Really fun stuff right there. And you live up in the Twin Cities, right? So
I do, yeah.
Nice little doubleheader in your backyard. So this is just it's a fun time of the minor league season because we're seeing all these guys, face each other every day, basically for the first time in a handful of months, but also a very challenging time as a prospect analyst because there's just so many guys that are off to either really good starts or really bad starts. And if we could fast forward, a month, everything would kind of normalize and we'd have a much better idea of what's real, what's fake. But if we're trying to pick guys up this early in the season or decide who to drop, we do have to kind of work with this limited data. So Zac and I are going to try to find some guys that we think have done something noteworthy, either good or bad, in the early going here. And the first one I've got for you, Zac, is the potential hitter breakout that you are buying so far in 2025.
Yeah, I think hitter breakouts early in the season are harder to pin down than pitching. Yep. You can kind of pop on a video of any pitcher and get a good sense for whether or not their stuff is going to play. And then, of course, you're looking for results. So hitters are a little bit more challenging. Where I'm going to stake my claim here is Aroon Escobar, second baseman for the Phillies. He has been excellent through his first 61 plate appearances, slashing 396, 475, 600. He was a really buzzy name going into spring breakout. Basically, everybody I sat by in Florida a month ago, that was the name they were talking about when it came to Philly's spring breakout. He laced a double in that game, and it just looked like a sign of things to come. It's a really pretty swing. He's a pretty decent athlete, and so far the underlying data is really strong. 106 mile an hour, 90th percentile exit velocity, 90% zone contact, and just 24% chase. So, the underlying data is doing a little bit of work here. The overall slash is really good. And then just some loud kind of industry feedback about this is a guy, to keep an eye on. And I'm just about ready to put him in the back end of the top 100 based on the video and the buzz and the data alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff Ponce came on the show back around the spring breakout there, and Escobar was, I think, the guy that he was maybe the loudest about in terms of pumping him up from what he saw in the spring. And so obviously we had all that great feedback heading into the regular season here, but it was still a guy that, all we'd seen in terms of when he'd really had success last year at the complex level, he was a year older than the typical guy there. So it's really encouraging to sort of see him off to this sort of almost like as advertised, but sort of like best case scenario as advertised start at single A. And what do you sort of see the eventual finished product looking like with Escobar? Like, I don't know if you have any names that come to mind or just sort of like a statistical profile, like where you think he's going to be strongest. Is it just going to be kind of, we don't know whether the hit or the power is going to be more impactful, or is he clearly like hit over power or power over hit to you?
Yeah, I think that is a little tough just because he's still so far away and a little bit older. I think he definitely would have played full season ball last year if he didn't miss so much time with shin splints of all things. Mm-hmm. So far, the data looks like it is power and hit. Yeah. I don't think there's going to be a ton of speed here. It's not a super projectable athletic frame, but he does a lot of things well in the box. The comp is maybe a little bit tough just because second base is such a dearth of talent right now. But I could see him being a 270 hitter with 20 home runs annually if this data is to be believed.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great call there for a hitter breakout you're buying. I've got a name that is kind of a, he's not a unknown by any stretch, but Cristian Hernandez of the Cubs is back at high A this year, and he was available to pick up in like our Dynasty Killers League that was like a startup. So I think Cristian Hernandez is probably rostered in a lot of leagues just because of his pedigree and stuff. But if you did a startup, he might not have been rostered. And if you're in a shallower league, he probably got churned. But he's more than doubled his hard hit rate from last year per our Sports Info Solutions data. Obviously, it's just been 15 games, but just love seeing Hernandez hitting the ball hard, cutting the strikeouts. He's got 9 steals already in 15 games. So Hernandez, I think that the defense and the speed, it's all kind of there. I think that the hit tool is kind of coming around. TBD on the game power from him, but Hernandez, I'm encouraged by what I've seen. I think if he was dropped in a shallower league, I'd be interested in kind of seeing where this goes with Cristian Hernandez.
Yeah. A lot of pedigree for Hernandez. It hasn't quite all come together. One thing I love to see when I'm, discussing a potential breakout that I believe in is a tangible change. He made a swing change last year, and the bat speed looks legit. The game power jump looks legit. I would be all over Hernandez as well.
Yeah. And then if anyone's looking for a catcher to pick up, I'm into Joe Mack's breakout. He just got promoted from AA to AAA after just 13 games. Was at AA pretty much all last year, so not a surprising promotion for Joe Mack, but he was just really dialed in at AA. I think he's going to be a 20-plus homer catcher for the Marlins in a couple of years. So digging Joe Mack as well. Zach, how about a potential hitter breakout you are not buying?
I'm having a hard time getting back into Spencer Jones. There's been a lot of conversation about his early start, 6 home runs already in just 69 plate appearances. He hits the ball extraordinarily hard. That has never been the issue with Spencer Jones' profile. Some of the buzz is being driven by the fact that he is using a torpedo bat. I can't really think of a player who needs a torpedo bat less than Spencer Jones might. And so what I really need to see is the strikeout rate come down, the decisions and contact profile really solidify, and he's still striking out at a 32% clip in his second go around in AA. I think I have been willing to give him a longer leash just because he was a two-way player. He sat out for some time with Tommy John. His kind of baseball age, if you will, is not the same as his actual age when we consider age to level. But what I'm seeing here looks a lot like what we saw last year. Just a hot stretch of early results.
Yeah, absolutely. And Spencer Jones, very, very telling that the Yankees assigned him back to AA. I think they would love for Spencer Jones to take off and, be in the big leagues this summer. Like, he's their type of guy. They'd love to victory lap that developmental story, but they couldn't even justify sending him to AAA. And he even got 17 games at AA back in 2023. So he's logged time at that level for a third year so far. So I could see if he was maybe, Zach, what would the strikeout rate really even need to be once he gets promoted to AAA? Like, let's say he'll probably get promoted to AAA in like a month regardless, just because of how long he's been at AA. But, what would you want to see from him at AAA to be like, oh, okay, like maybe would it be like 27%, 28% strikeout rate? Like, what's the danger zone for Spencer Jones?
Yeah, I don't think it'll take much, which is the difficult part with his profile. It's at 32% right now. It was around 33 last year. I think it really only needs to get to like 28% given the damage that he's able to do. There's kind of a sliding scale between contact and damage. And at some point, the damage just drowns it out. So I don't think it is going to take much. And I think he's worth monitoring very closely for that. Because it's just one little tweak that could unlock a lot of upside here.
Yeah, I think that very well said. Like, it's not, he doesn't have to do a ton, but he has to do something to improve that contact rate. And yeah, the torpedo bat, like a Yankees issued torpedo bat, maybe they just send them down to everyone at all the affiliates or something. But doesn't need that. I'll throw out another guy who is at AA and returned to AA. Does not have the swing and miss issues that Spencer Jones does, but CJ Kayfus with the Guardians. I just don't think we're learning that much about CJ Kayfus here through 14 games at AA. He's hitting 434. Has cut the strikeouts from 28% to 20% this year, but you would expect that for a 22-year-old first baseman who's now 23, and BABIP's over 560. So, if you could like include CJ Kayfus as like the second piece or something like that in a trade right now, I would look into that. And then you look at just the big league level for the Guardians. I just don't see a path for Kayfus to get in there like in the absolute near term. So, a good hitter, a talented hitter, but I don't quite know if he's going to clear the bar for a player with his defensive limitations. And if he does clear the bar, I don't think it's going to be all that exciting. I think it'll just be kind of something you can use, but not maybe more of like a corner infield than a starting first baseman. So if you can capitalize on CJ Kayfus's extremely loud start to the season, I would consider doing that. Anything to add on Kayfus there?
I mean, I would just say I don't dislike Kayfus, but I'm very aligned with what you just laid out. I don't think there's a ton of upside there. The underlying power is right around average. It plays up in games a little bit, but I think we should be a little bit skeptical of just corner profiles in general. The offensive bar that you need to clear just to grab playing time as a big leaguer is pretty high. And I don't know how Kayfus stacks up there, especially given the roster situation.
Okay, now a struggling hitter to buy low on. We've got plenty of struggling hitters to choose from, but who's the one where you're kind of most confident that these struggles will be short-lived?
I kind of snuck Dylan Cruz in here, even though he doesn't qualify for prospect status anymore. What's happening on the field doesn't make sense to me, given the rest of his analytical profile. It's good bat speed. He hits the ball hard. He has a good approach. He just hasn't hit like you would expect basically at any level. And it's clear to me he's still getting adjusted there. Over the last week, he's been excellent. And so hoping that turns the season around. But I would be buying Dylan Cruz if there's any kind of discount right now. Had him at number 2 in my top 100 book this offseason. And basically everything that I wrote in that blurb is true. He's just getting unlucky on balls in play. He has a 212 BABIP. His expected batting average is like 100 points better than his actual batting average. And his WOBA and WOBA on contact are both up year over year. So I think what we're seeing on the field is a little bit of a mirage right now, and it's going to come together and click for him.
Yeah, and I think he's even heated up a little bit here in the past few days.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a 7-game hitting streak and 3 steals, 1 strikeout, 1 walk over the 7 games. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely not anywhere near as bad as his season numbers are. Cruz. How about I'll go with like kind of a guy that you could probably get for pretty cheap right now. Brandon Winokur with the Twins is at high A, and he's a 20-year-old. He was at single A for 94 games last year. Was 18% better than league average, had a 28% strikeout rate at single A last year. And Winokur has really loud tools, big time power potential. He's a 6'6" shortstop who can play the outfield too. And then he's also been a decent runner thus far in his professional career. But through 15 games at high A, Winokur is hitting 175. He's got 0 home runs. But the strikeouts are down compared to last year. The walks are up. He's already stolen 4 bases in those 15 games. So I like the idea of trying to get Winokur cheap, especially in deeper leagues. And you might even be able to pick him up. Someone might have dropped him in a shallower league, but I haven't changed my tune on Winokur at all.
I really like Winokur. When he was first drafted, I was a little concerned. He looked like a baby giraffe, still trying to figure out what to do with all those limbs. I saw him in spring breakout, and I was surprised by how fluid of an athlete he was at shortstop. There, I think the athletic upside is really loud. He hits the ball super hard, and I think it's just a matter of time before he figures out high A. But I walked away from the spring breakout very impressed with Winokur, and I would also buy Probably in any leagues deeper than 15 teams.
Yeah, I mean, like he's got a legitimately high, like he could someday he could be a top 25 fantasy prospect. Like he's got that type of upside. I mean, it might not work out, but this would be a good chance to get him for pretty cheap. Did you want to throw out any more names for potential buy low guys?
Yeah, just because I felt like I was breaking the rules a little bit with Dylan Cruz, I added a few names here. The first one is Carson Williams, who is striking out a lot in AAA. He has one previous stint in AAA a few years ago. That was a weird kind of location situation where they just wanted him close to the big league club with some legal issues going on in Tampa. I think he's always going to be a streaky player. He's getting adjusted to AAA. I would not be concerned. I kind of also expect him to strike out at a 30% rate forever, just given the bat path and some of the deficiencies he has against right-handed breaking stuff. But definitely not concerned about him as is. Matt Shaw, also, I think this is a good buying opportunity. He was a far better prospect than his results at the major league level showed. I think a lot of people were turned off by seeing his stance for the first time, which was revealing to me just how many people don't watch minor league games. It's looked like that for a while. So I think it's not uncommon for players to come up and struggle in their first taste. I said the same thing, I think, on this podcast a year ago about Colton Cowser. I feel the same way about Matt Shaw. And then Aiden Miller also struggling out of the gate. I think it's hard to find prospect with a more decorated track record than his. He hits the ball hard. He's a decent athlete, might need to move over to third base, but this is not the time for the panic button on Aiden Miller either.
Yeah, I think it would have been almost surprising if Williams had gone to AAA and been striking out at like a 25% clip or something, right? Like this is not surprising at all. Just ridiculously toolsy aside from the hit tool. And then, Shaw, like, It's funny to not watch video, but then also have takes on a guy's stance. But what did you make of his incredibly low bat speed? Like it's a tiny sample, and I think that's what, like, there are StatCast things that will allow you to buy low on Matt Shaw if the person holding him is someone that just looks at that stuff as gospel and like that type of thing. But like, any concerns at all about the eventual power output with Shaw, especially kind of given the way that park can sometimes suppress power?
Yeah, Wrigley is a tricky place to kind of forecast what's going to happen based on the wind, but I think his bat speed is often a reflection of the pitches you're swinging at. His discipline kind of fell apart at the big league level. It was worse than we've seen from him at any other level. When you're flailing out of the zone, you're not getting your A swing off. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I don't think Matt Shaw is like a bat speed monster or anything. I think it's probably average bat speed, but it looks a lot worse because he was coming, his approach came undone.
Yeah, very well said there. All right. We are going to head to a quick break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Zach which minor league pitcher has popped the most for him on video earlier this season. So stay tuned. Finally, baseball is back. The MLB season. Knock it out of the park with Vivid Seats and score great tickets to the biggest games of the year. Every fastball, every home run, every eye-popping play of your favorite team live and in person. Plus, with Vivid Seats rewards, you earn rewards for every single purchase. Just buy 10 tickets, then cash in your credit toward your free 11th ticket. Talk about an easy win. And here's a pro reward tip. When buying tickets for the whole group, split the bill and make progress towards your free 11th ticket even faster. From behind the dugout to the upper deck, Vivid Seats has great tickets for all the 2025 games that matter to you. Just visit vividseats.com or download the app today. Vivid Seats. Experience it live. See vividseats.com/rewards for terms and conditions. All right, back here with Zac Beck of the Dynasty Dugout on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. And my next question for Zach is, we talked about some hitters to buy low on, maybe some hitters that you're not panicking about, some guys you're not really buying. But what about a pitcher that's popped for you on video so far this season?
There are a couple of honorable mentions that didn't make the show sheet. The first one I'm going to call out is Connolly Early, who was, again, another player that I saw in spring breakout. His fastball was up a few ticks. I think we've seen this kind of archetype before. The lefty who shows up to the regular season up a few ticks on his fastball. Previous models include Quinn Matthews and Ricky Tiedemann. I'm not saying Connolly Early is that guy, but I really like his arsenal, and he's getting just fantastic results so far. So a watch list candidate there. The other honorable mention would be Wei and Lin with the Athletics. He has been incredibly dominant. He was kind of a late cycle signee for the A's last June, making his pro debut. He's 19. He's pretty broad shouldered. I think he's 6'2", 200 pounds or something in that vicinity. And he's really, right now, this stuff isn't going to blow you away. It's the conviction he throws it with and the command that he has, just really great executionally. So if you enjoy kind of the art of pitching, he's your guy, and you're just hoping for a tick up in stuff. The headliner here for me is Brandon Clarke of the Boston Red Sox. He's a big athletic lefty. So far this season, 6 innings, 1 earned. 6 1/3 innings, 1 earned, 11 strikeouts against 23 batters faced. That's a 48% strikeout rate. He is a imposing presence on the mound. Very athletic delivery. He hums it up to 100 miles an hour, sits 98, 99 pretty regularly. He has 2 slider variations, a shorter one and a sweepier one, and then a changeup that averages 88 miles an hour. So coming in pretty hot, but still 10 miles an hour off of the fastball, and he sells it pretty well. It projects his average. He is the one guy that I've watched this year where I felt like this is, potential premium front of the rotation stuff. I think there's a long development journey here, given he was drafted out of a JUCO in the 5th round last year, but really like what the Red Sox are doing in terms of their pitching development lately. And sometimes you just watch video and you're like, that's the guy I want to hitch my wagon to early or take a flyer on.
Would you rather pick up Brandon Clarke or Aroon Escobar if you could? I
think Escobar. The industry feedback on Escobar is much louder right now. I just prefer hitters over pitchers kind of whenever possible. I think pitchers can be big risers, but I'm already ready to put Escobar in the back end of the top 100. The data is really strong. Pitchers just have this thing where they break on occasion. And I don't think Brandon Clarke is particularly close right now. So for those reasons, Escobar for me.
Yeah. Clarke is a great in-season pickup. Like that's kind of the way to play the pitching prospect game, is like you jump on a Brandon Clarke early, get him for free, and then you sort of see where the price goes. Maybe you cash him out before he gets hurt. Maybe you hold him the whole way. But yeah, definitely agree with that. I'll throw out Michael Forret with the Orioles. He's had a really great start to the year down at High A, and he was there for most of last year, so I don't think he'll be there much longer. In fact, he might even get the bump to Double A in the coming days. But he's just been making High A hitters look really silly with that sweeper, and he's been just really good at keeping the ball down and then changing eye levels as well later in the count. So Forret has jumped out to me. I mean, like guys, there's guys that we know look just disgusting. Like a Connor Prelip can put on a crazy sizzle reel, but that's not really news or anything all that actionable. We sort of know what to expect with a guy like Connor Prelip. But I think Michael Forret might be out there in some leagues. I think he's less than 5% owned in Fantrax. So I'm excited about the future for Michael Forret there of the Orioles. And I'll throw out Ben Hess of the Yankees too. I definitely I get it more. Like it's tough to just get like good video on these FYPD pitchers before they actually get into affiliated ball. And then when you see them, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. So yeah, Ben Hess of the Yankees, also a guy for me.
I'm a fan of Ben Hess. I think when he went in the back end of the first round last year, it was maybe a little bit of a surprise just given his college numbers. But you look at the metrics on his fastball and you start to understand why the Yankees were interested in him. Comes in very flat, also 19 inches of hop on it. It is at least a plus pitch. And I would be unsurprised if the Yankees, added to complement that pitch, whether that be a cutter or a sweeper or some sinker variation. They love adding different fastball looks. So I'm a big fan of Ben Hess. I always kind of like a huskier guy on the mound for whatever reason. They're just fun to watch.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's different types of pitcher bodies that I like. But yeah, definitely like a burly workhorse frame, as long as the stuff is there to match. Okay. This is like, you already mentioned Brandon Clarke, so we can't mention him again, but 2024 first year player draft prospect who's been the biggest riser for you since the start of the spring.
I have to put Nick Kurtz in here just because of what he's done. I think in the book, I had him as my number 14 overall prospect. He would certainly be within the top 5. Now, he is making his major league debut tonight, allegedly against Kumar Rocker. Has just been excellent to open the year. So that's kind of an obligatory, mention of Nick Kurtz. I think the guy that I'm most excited about is Ryan Sloan. High school pitcher taken by Seattle last year. He's only thrown 4 2/3 in the regular season, but again, another guy that I watched in spring breakout. He showed up to camp with a big league pitcher's butt. I don't know what they're doing in Seattle, but he has a wagon attached to him, and Zyhir Martinez has a wagon attached to him now. It's a premium fastball. The slider is really, really good. The changeup kind of has some arm side fade, so they move in opposite directions. It is reminiscent to me of Will Warren, what he does with the two-seamer and the sweeper, but with some velo separation between the fastball and the changeup. And he can really pump it in there. He's sitting mid to high 90s pretty regularly. He is if I were to attach myself to a prep pitcher from last year's class, it would be Ryan Sloan. I would consider him a top 100 prospect right now.
Wow. Yeah. Very high praise to be throwing Ryan Sloan in the top 100, but easy to sort of see the upside there. Kind of just it's like the upside is so undeniable that this could end up being sort of like an Andrew Painter type of guy in a year or two, where it's worth the inherent risk to roster him at this point.
Yeah, I think about Travis Sikora and Thomas White of last year as kind of the demographic we're chasing here. And so if you can get in on that early and for free, I would urge people to do so.
And just since you brought up Nick Kurtz, I've been getting questions, like, would you drop Tristan Casas for Nick Kurtz? Who would you take rest of season, like Nick Kurtz or Brandon Nimmo, like those types of questions? Like what's sort of your outlook for Kurtz now that he's up? Like, is this one where, like, if you were bidding on him on Sunday in like a redraft league, you're just willing to kind of blow the bank and you're pretty solid that he's going to be up all season and very productive? Or do you think that the hype is maybe past the realistic 2025 expectations?
I think the hype has probably surpassed it. The contact numbers at AAA were a little bit lower than we're used to seeing from Kurtz. I think he could struggle a little bit early. That said, I don't know that there's a more anticipated debut coming this year than Kurtz. You could throw around Bubba Chandler's name probably as the next domino that'll fall. But in terms of if I'm going to blow fab on a 2025 debut, it's probably on Kurtz. Sacramento has already looked like a really positive hitters environment. And that lineup is surprisingly lethal. They're in the top half of the league in basically every offensive category right now. So if you're thinking, man, Nick Kurtz is really going to have to carry this offense, not the case. And I think folks are onto that now with Brent Rooker and Tyler Soderstrom having such dominant starts. I would take him over Brandon Nimmo in Dynasty pretty easily. I think that becomes a tougher question in redraft. I would also take Kurtz over Casas. I think they're not dissimilar. I just prefer the upside of Kurtz. And obviously, whatever's going on with Casas, maybe it's related to the intercostal strain that he had. Not look things up in a redraft format with Kurtz.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'd probably take the sort of the unknown with Kurtz versus sort of the up and down nature of Casas's career to date. But yeah, similar guys from just a pure upside standpoint. But I think Kurtz maybe the better bet right now. I'll throw out another FYPD guy that's at least if I were to do my rankings today, he would be a big riser. Caleb Bonemer, infielder with the White Sox. There were a bunch of these sort of like prep shortstops who got between like 2 and 3.5 million, and just kind of tough to rank those guys and separate them. But of that group of guys that we haven't really talked about that much this offseason, Caleb Bonemer of the White Sox, after a great start at single A, 7 steals, basically as many walks as strikeouts so far. And then I'll throw a quick shout out to Ben Hess's teammate, Bryce Cunningham, down at High A Hudson Valley, making his pro debut, one of multiple Yankees 2024 draftees in that rotation. Through 3 starts at High A, Cunningham has 22 strikeouts and 2 walks in 18 innings. So interesting name, at least for deeper leagues, I think, Bryce Cunningham. And then Bonemer, I think Bonemer maybe is like a guy I'd grab in like leagues where 250 prospects are rostered, something like that.
I think that's right for Bonemer. Cunningham has surprisingly been one of the guys that I have gotten the most feedback on. I was sitting next to Smith Brickner of Baseball Prospectus and Pinstripe Alley. He's a huge Yankees fan and writes up their system every year. He kind of tapped me on the shoulder when Cunningham was coming on the mound and said, "This is the guy you need to watch. I know everybody's here for Ben Hess, but Cunningham might be better." And so far he's pitching like he has something to prove in that regard.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Do you have like what can you add anything about the repertoire with Cunningham, or just sort of like the type of pitcher that you kind of envision him developing into?
I've only seen him once, and I didn't have pitch level data on him. What I do know is he throws hard, and I believe he has a sweeper, but I don't have a ton on him from a pitch level perspective. He does look very athletic on the mound, more so than Ben Hess. Yeah, so if you're a looks good in jeans kind of prospector, Bryce Cunningham may be more of your flavor. But the stuff looked good when I saw him live, and he his fastball was mid to upper 90s.
Awesome. Okay, well, this is going to be a very fun question here, Zach. My next article is going to be my annual pitching prospect or relief pitching prospect rankings article, in a labor of love. And the question for you here is the minor league reliever with the highest fantasy ceiling. And I'll have some names to throw out too. You don't have to limit this to just pure, this guy's only a reliever right now in the minors. It can be someone that you just project to be a reliever, but minor league reliever with the highest fantasy ceiling.
Okay, I'm glad you added that caveat that they don't need to be a reliever right now, because what I have written in the show sheet is the right answer just Jacob Misiorowski? I think if you were asking me today whether or not he would be a starter or in the bullpen long term, I probably lean towards bullpen. I think he's almost certain to break through the big league roster in a bullpen role, similar to how they treated Corbin Burns. But the upside is obvious here. I think he has maybe the biggest ceiling of any pitching prospect in the minors, should he stick in the rotation. He has not cut the walks down, really. I don't know how much he needs to, given how good the stuff is. The quality of contact suppression is great. The strikeouts are great. There's just going to be free passes. There's a pretty stark divide in his results based on number of walks in an outing. 2 or less, and it's rare that he gives up a run, 3 or more, and they kind of turn into blowups. So just very volatile there. I'm hoping that when he breaks through in the bullpen, that the major league kind of pitching coaching there can help him just be in and around the zone a little bit more often. As a Brewers fan, I also have to mention the recent call-up of Craig Yoho. The kind of 7th, 8th, and 9th innings are largely spoken for in Milwaukee right now, so he's going to be a middle reliever for a little while. But I wouldn't be surprised if he worked himself into some leverage innings towards the end of the year. And then I'll also just add, this isn't typically a demographic that I scout, with any sort of rigor, but the names that came to mind immediately, and these might overlap with yours, are Zach Maxwell, Andrew Walters, who we saw in MLB already, Daniel Palencia, and Luis May. Maxwell with Cincinnati, Luis May also with Cincinnati, Andrew Walters with Cleveland, and Daniel Palencia with the Cubs.
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, the Brewers, it's just a kind of a late inning factory. Like Abner Uribe looks amazing. He's throwing strikes. Like he looks like a closer that's kind of ready to go. And if you had Mizorowski in a dynasty league, is he just like a hold for you? Are you holding? Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, that the range of outcomes with him is just incredibly wide. He did have a really good start, I think, yesterday. One walk, 8 Ks, and 6 one-hit scoreless innings against Durham yesterday for Mizorowski. So, promising start. I like you would still probably project him as a reliever. Those are great names. Palencia, kind of a nice, like, sort of under the radar name with the Cubs there. Been kind of tracking him for a bit, and he's kind of going through it in sort of a developmental fashion as a big league reliever, where it's not a finished product, but the pieces are there for a future late inning arm for sure. The guys I'll throw out. So I think my official answer for this, I'm going to go with a true reliever, and I'm going to go with Tyson Neighbors of the Padres. He's pitching at high A right now, I believe, and has 3+ pitches, I believe, and has been pretty dominant thus far. 16 Ks and 7 2/3 innings for Tyson Neighbors, just the one save down at high A, but love his combination of sort of stuff and the sort of demeanor he carries on the mound. Just strikes me as a future closer. And I mean, the Padres might have maybe the most interesting pure relief prospects in the minors currently, but I think Tyson Neighbors is my favorite of the bunch. And then I'll throw out just 3 guys who are just too hurt for this to be a realistic outcome. But if Reggie Crawford of the Giants, or Daniel Espino of the Guardians, or Teddy McGraw of the Mariners were to ever stay healthy for like a 20, 30, 40 inning stretch, I think they could be lights out relievers. And then for a starter, kind of along the lines of your Mizorowski one, I think Cade Horton might just be the Cubs closer in like 2 years. They're obviously going to exhaust trying to develop Horton as a starter, but I just look at his sort of innings by year, and you saw how the fastball really kind of diminished last year while trying to hold up under that workload. Like, I just think Horton, you could just be like, look, fastball, slider, you're going to be a top 10 closer. You're going to make a ton of money. This is what's best for your career. I could see that being the way that goes with Cade Horton.
Totally. The health has been a big issue. Even when he is healthy, you made reference to this, stuff kind of diminishes as we get later into the season. So I think any way that they can sort of throttle his workload and still make him a valuable arm, even if that's a 95 and a slider closer, would be a smart move there. They're going to do everything they can to keep him as a starter, especially given the draft capital they used to take him. But I would be unsurprised to see that scenario you laid out kind of play out.
Zach, I don't usually pay attention to the chat, too focused on my guest, but I got a question in the chat of, is Zyhir Hope on his way to be a top 10 prospect? Thought that was noteworthy just because I love Zyhir Hope's start to the season.
Yeah, me too. I think I had him 12th in my offseason book. So yes, he is on his way to being a top 100, or I'm sorry, a top 10 prospect. If you Z-scored his kind of underlying data, the exits, the decisions, the bat to ball, last year's numbers probably would have been the top scorer in affiliated minor league ball. He's a freak athlete. He hits the ball super hard. He makes a ton of contact. He doesn't chase. The profile last year was pretty unassailable. It's showing up again this year. I think the big question was, that was an abbreviated season for him due to injury. The Arizona Fall League numbers didn't really align with his regular season numbers. And he's back, this year doing exactly what he did last year.
Yeah, man. I think you're on the money with that. Now, favorite hitting prospect 25 or older. I mean, this is just kind of a fun group to choose from because we've got a bunch of guys that are, quad A, likely quad A, maybe even some guys like at double A that are that old. But who'd you go with for favorite hitting prospect 25 or older?
This is not Brewers homerism. I want to lead with that, but it's Ernesto Martinez Jr. He's a first baseman in Nashville right now. Through 77 plate appearances, the baseball card stats are pretty ridiculous. He's slashing 303, 390, 485 with 3 home runs, striking out less than 20% of the time, which is impressive for a 6'6", 250-pound monster. The underlying data is even more encouraging. We're getting to the point where for the AAA guys that have been playing just a little bit longer, the underlying data is starting to stabilize. His 90th percentile exit is over 111 miles an hour as of recording today. That is second in public data sets behind Addison Barger, who has way fewer balls in play. So, kind of take what Barger's doing there with a grain of salt. He's making contact in the zone 87, 88% of the time and chasing just 22% of the time. Everything here points to kind of a late minor league career breakout. I would be unsurprised to see him contribute in Milwaukee in the near future. Rhys Hoskins has heated up lately, but Jake Bauers is kind of entirely expendable in this role. So, to the extent that they want to try to inject a little bit more offense, Ernesto Martinez could be the answer in pretty short order.
Yeah, Ernesto Martinez, maybe the guy that I don't have on my top 400 who would slot in the highest if I were to redo the top 400 today. The age was working against him. I mean, he's been someone, we've been doing RotoWire player notes on Ernesto Martinez for almost a decade. So that's how long he's been around. But I love that call and would have definitely mentioned him if you didn't. And a special shout out to Will Wilson, who's 26 years old and I believe is making his big league debut today, tomorrow, whenever the Guardians play next, maybe. He was obviously a first round pick by the Giants or by the Angels way back in 2019. Then he got traded to the Giants. I forgot about that. And just never really kind of made it work and had a monster start to the year at AAA as a 26-year-old. So shout out to Will Wilson. He's a candidate here, I would say, although I don't really see a path to him playing significantly. I will throw out that maybe my favorite 27-year-old hitting prospect is Mac Perniak with the Cardinals, but he's off to a pretty slow start. So I'll throw out Otto Kemp with the Phillies. Pretty good defensive third baseman, if I'm not mistaken, Otto Kemp, and he's 25 years old, bats from the right side, hitting 280 with a 400 OBP, 610 slug, 6 homers, 3 steals in 100 plate appearances at AAA. So Otto Kemp, not sure if his ascension to the majors is coming anytime soon, but I think he's at least interesting in deeper formats.
Otto Kemp to me looks like Caleb Durbin's older brother. Not from a profile perspective, but like physical comp. They seem similar to me. He doesn't have the same speed that Durbin has, and definitely not the same caliber of bat to ball. But seeing them next to each other looks like Caleb Durbin evolved a little. Got spurted up 5 inches.
Yeah, I was gonna say like his taller older brother, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, like you broke the rules a little with the Dylan Cruz as a buy low. Like Caleb Durbin's probably truly my favorite hitting prospect in this age range. But obviously he is rostered everywhere at this point. How about this one? There's maybe a bit more meat on the bone. Favorite pitching prospect 25 or older. Sometimes the pitchers can kind of come along a little slower, and it's more excusable to be a very good old pitching prospect, I think.
Yeah, I'll throw out Ian Seymour, who who is 25. He's a left-handed pitcher in AAA right now for Tampa Bay. Since returning from Tommy John in late 2023, he's been just a run suppression monster. He has like a career 2.49 minor league ERA. He's doing it again this year, striking out 33% of batters, walking just 6.7%. He's not going to blow you away with high octane stuff. He sits kind of low 90s, but it's a funky delivery. He's very deceptive. He tunnels well. It's a fastball with good shape, which helps it play a little bit more. And the changeup plays extraordinarily well off the fastball. He really fools you kind of with that arm speed. I think the slider is probably the best secondary. Again, just plays well off of the heater, which is kind of what you have to do when you don't have premium velocity. And I see him pitching for Tampa Bay at some point in the rotation this year. So kind of a guy to give a shout, I think, both in dynasty and redraft. The best time to pick up a player is right before they debut, if they're unheralded, that is, and then sell them after they string together like two good starts at the major league level. That's what I'd be trying to do with Ian Seymour.
The hitters will tell you like how good a guy's stuff is usually. I don't know if that's quite true with Seymour because his numbers are so crazy and his velocity is so unspectacular that like I wouldn't expect him to just be this type of guy against big league hitters or anything. But if any, like I think the Rays are the team that would make this profile work in a big league starting rotation. Like I think he's in the right spot. And they've got a lot of depth, but I agree with you. Ian Seymour will get a shot at some point. The guy I wanted to throw out was Noah Cameron of the Royals, who also will be getting a shot at some point this season, I would imagine. I think he's got just maybe a little bit more fastball than Seymour, but Seymour probably has the better secondaries. They're both guys that are gonna throw strikes. So I like Noah Cameron a lot with the Royals. And then a guy who's not pitching currently, but might have been dropped in some leagues just because he's not pitching. Jack Perkins with the Athletics is on the IL at AAA with a lat injury, but one of their better pitching prospects, not helped by the move-in venues for 2025 at least, but I would still add Jack Perkins if he'd been dropped in a deeper league.
Agreed. Maybe the one thing I'll add on Cameron is it is a pretty changeup heavy arsenal. It's a good changeup. I would say pound for pound, it's just as good as Seymour. Then the other thing that I'll say about Seymour is maybe 10 years ago, he would be designated as like a lefty one out guy, a loogie coming out of the bullpen just to get a lefty out. But I think he can make it work as a starter, especially in Tampa Bay.
Nice. Yeah. So Seymour over Cameron for you in Dynasty?
I think so.
Nice. Okay, Zach. Well, my one last question was going to be prospect you've picked up in at least one Dynasty league since opening day that you're most excited to be rostering. I'll start for this one. Mentioned him, I think, last week, but I'll bring him up again just because Gabriel Rincones of the Phillies, he's below league average at this point now. 92 WRC plus just because he's barely walking, 5% walk rate so far in 20 games. But Rincones has the lowest strikeout rate of his career by a lot. And we know the power is very legitimate. And I think that he's got a high enough floor and a high enough ceiling that being able to add him right now when he's kind of knocking on the door of the big leagues is very appealing to me with Gabriel Rincones. Probably gets platooned, but I still think there's enough power there for him to be a useful platoon bat in the right format. So he's my pickup. I mean, I'm always picking up pitchers in dynasty leagues, but being able to add a hitter that I feel this good about in Gabriel Rincones is probably my favorite dynasty pickup of the year. I'll throw it to you.
I like that shout. I think Rincones to me is like the platonic ideal of what a baseball player should look like. He is just like, I mean, it's like a perfect baseball player's frame. Hits the ball really hard, has been doing so kind of all year. I know he's below average by WRC plus right now, but not super concerned. I think he's a real target in daily leagues where you're a little less concerned about platooning, because he is gonna tee off on righties. The maybe the most obvious pickup I think so far has been Luis Pena of the Brewers. I would consider him around a top 50 prospect right now. So not available for most leagues anymore. Probably wasn't available in a lot of deeper leagues to open the year, but having him on your roster feels really good right now. It looks legit. I think both him and Braylon Payne have been big breakouts kind of early this year. So that's one that I managed to scoop up in some shallower leagues that I'm excited about. Outside of that, kind of my pickups have been very littered throughout the show sheet. So I have used Fab on Aroon Escobar. I've used a little bit on Ernesto Martinez, a little bit on Seymour, a couple leagues where I picked up Wei and Lin of the Athletics. So we've touched on all of those in a lot of detail. I think the big kind of ticket item so far this year has been Luis Pena.
Since you brought up Pena, where do you think he stands if you were just comparing him to Braylon Payne and Slade Caldwell? Who would rank highest of those three for you right now? Just because to me, those are three guys that are are just shooting up based on what they're doing. And I've got a question. I think someone asked me yesterday, like if you had to pick one of those guys, who would you go with? Would it be Pena for you?
It would be Pena for me pretty easily. I think it's more of a toss-up between Payne and Caldwell at this point. Pena is essentially putting up the numbers stateside, kind of under the hood, that Jesus Mate put up in the DSL last year. And I think we need to take that seriously because I know the stats from the DSL probably aren't worth the server space they're stored on, but Pena also had a great campaign and everything under the hood looks really good right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got the numbers, that's for sure. The power between him and those other two, maybe he ends up being the best. I think I would pick Caldwell for the most power out of those three, but Pena probably wins the hit tool or the speed tool. Well, maybe Pena versus Payne for speed would be interesting. And actually, they're all crazy runners. But
yeah, I am a points league guy, so I tend to kind of devalue the stolen base impact just because it's not a unique category. Most points leagues don't reward stolen bases very handsomely. So I think in Roto, it's a much tighter conversation between those three, just given the speed that I think Braylon Payne will bring to the table. And Slade Caldwell is no slouch there. I just kind of prefer the approach and bat to ball and exits we're seeing from Pena right now.
All right, Zach, this has been fantastic. Why don't you let people know where they can follow you and read your stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at @upper_Beck. It's kind of a play on the Upper Deck brand of baseball cards. All my writing goes up on the Dynasty Dugout. That is Chris Clegg's kind of publication. So I write a weekly minor league recap column called the 3-Cap, where I highlight kind of 3 feature players and then a bunch of news and notes on other notables. I'm also on Blue Sky, to the effect that this audience is on Blue Sky. So doing my best to simulcast across those kind of clones of websites, but the majority of my posting happens on Twitter.
Excellent stuff, Zach. Strongly recommend following him and strongly recommend checking out his prospect book that is free to read and pinned at the top of his profile page. So make sure you're following Zac Beck at @upper_Beck. This has been the RotoWire Prospect Podcast brought to you by Vivid Seats. Thanks for listening.